Hi, and welcome to And So Much More. I'm Cami Smith, and I'm your host. And I'm here with a friend of mine, Daryl Calfee, who we were just talking about how to introduce him. And entrepreneur, business leader, community investor.
Yeah.
But I kind of want to go with author today.
Yeah.
And I don't know why that didn't just jump at me when we were talking about it.
Yeah.
Because that is one of the reasons I get to have this conversation today, which thank you so much. I'm looking forward to it. You have lived, it feels like 1,000 lives in one life, ups and downs, and you've experienced so many wonderful things, but so many hard things as well. And so while we're not going to talk entirely about it, we are here because of your wife's journey with cancer.
That's right.
Johanna.
Yeah.
And when did she pass?
In August of 2023.
August of 2023. So a lot of life has happened since then.
That's right, yeah.
And we were talking off camera. I have a lot of conversations with patients, and some of our patients have these insane, powerful stories that they share about perseverance and overcoming fear, and sometimes just living in fear. But I don't have a ton of conversations with patients' families, and what you have lived, I think is just right up there as far as like just the weight that you're carrying. So why don't you tell me a little bit about that first? So Jo received care here at Pearson Cancer Center. Was that where she started care?
Yeah, so it was August 14th, 2019. I'll never forget the day. We got the call that her biopsy came back positive. And so she had stage 3 inflammatory breast cancer. And for the breast cancer community out there, that's something that is going to exhibit signs on the outside of her breast. And that was one of the things that, honestly, an earlier mammogram probably would have found. And so because she was under 40, it's not one of those things that we're on, hey, you need to do this all the time. So I would just encourage, like, hey, get a yearly mammogram. And if your PCP is resistant and saying, hey, you're too young, push on that. Like, say, hey, like, no, this is something that I want to do.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said for advocacy for yourself.
That's right.
Inside those rooms.
Yeah. So August 14th, 2019, we find out that she has breast cancer. And literally that day, we were at the oncology center here in Lynchburg. And a lot of that is a byproduct of having, number one, a great community. And by a great community, I mean a great friend group. And we're lucky enough to have some people that work in healthcare in that friend group. And so they made some calls. And at the end of the day, Dr. Emily Jenkins got us in. And we went and sat down with her. And so that day sticks out as being very surreal. Dr. Jenkins had to ask the question. And the question was, hey, one of the options on the table is to terminate your pregnancy today, because she was pregnant.
How far along was she at that point?
A little over a month and a half. We'd found out in July that she was pregnant. And so, it was a question that Jo answered so boldly, like so bravely in that moment. And she just said no. And so what that meant was that she had to delay whatever treatment path she chose for, until into the second trimester. And the truth is that there's just not a lot of data out there on pregnant women going through breast cancer treatment, specifically chemotherapy. And so I did all the research I could do. We found a small study that was done overseas, and it said that the outcomes were positive if the birth mothers waited until the second trimester. And so we sought a lot of counsel. We went and saw Dr. Plock early about surgery, and we talked to Dr. Jenkins. We went to UVA, got a second opinion. We also ended up at Duke as well. And so long story short, she chose to delay her treatment, and it really gave Emmanuel, our son, a fighting chance to kind of set up in the womb. And he's here today, happy and healthy. He's over 5 years old, and so he's a gift every day.
Listening to Monster Truck music.
Listening to Monster Truck music. In your car. Yeah. So, tracking back, it's obviously been a very long journey. But my mind can very quickly go to being in that room and watching her make that decision. And then I fast forward to this morning, and I'm getting him ready for school. And so both things can be true, right? Like, you can still have a moment of grief about that loss, but you can also be very thankful for the fact that he's here. And honestly, time, the visual representation of time is watching children grow. And so when you look at the growth of Emmanuel from where he was at to where he's at today, like, wow, what a visual representation. The girls, Ellen Easton, so we have a 14-year-old and an 11-year-old.
Yeah.
And watching a visual representation of them growing, even in just the last 2 years since Johanna's death, they're just different people.
Yeah.
Physically and obviously emotionally.
Gosh, and to see so much of her in them.
Yeah.
That's such a gift.
It's beautiful. Yeah, it is.
So as you were going along, because she received care really all over the place.
That's
anywhere
right.
you guys could go
That's
to
right.
get anything that would just push this along a little bit further.
Yeah.
And so what was that like as the spouse, because you really had to step in the balance in a lot of ways for that process.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Well, I never talked about this before, but this might be the perfect place to do that.
Okay.
I became the Google note taker,
Yes.
right? So from our very first appointment till literally until the last one before her death, I have Google Notes that I just took at every appointment.
Yeah.
And part of it was for me just to ingest it and learn it. Part for me was her memory at times was going throughout the treatments, and just to go back and recall, like, hey, what did we say? What's the next thing we're supposed to do?
Yeah.
And I stepped away from my role. I had a full-time position as vice president of marketing at Moore & Giles here in Lynchburg. And it became very clear that if I was going to continue to help her, I was going to need to step away. And also just the taking care of the kids. So I kind of became her primary caregiver in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. We obviously have a great community. People showed up with food and would come to oncology appointments, but the majority of that weight fell on me. And then the kids had to get to school and, had to have diapers changed and all that stuff. So those were the things that,
that's a lot.
Yeah. And I my mother-in-law is a breast cancer survivor. My own mother is a breast cancer survivor.
Wow. This is a huge part of your story.
Huge part of our story. And I think, all of those situations happened much later in life, and I think typically when we think about, oh, my spouse is going to get sick, we say for better, for worse, right?
Yeah.
In sickness and in health, we think about ourselves way down the road.
Oh, yeah.
But when it happens at 38, it's just a different story because there's so many other responsibilities and career, children, financial obligations. And so just had to take them all head on.
Wow. And you and Joe both had, I don't know if this is by choice, but you had a very community-centric, almost public life because of the level to which you guys chose to give back and be a part of this community. So going through this, I say publicly, it's not like you were out there making yourself a spectacle. But what was it like to go through something like this in a very public way and that so many people were interested in what was happening? I myself, just having any crossover with you guys, gosh, I just thought about you guys so often and reading her posts and her updates. What was that like to just experience that in a public way?
Well, I think for a lot of my life, I felt like I was in the sidecar of whatever journey that Johanna was on, right? And, that starts back with her being in TV, right? So a lot of people's interest was the fact that she was a local TV personality for a long time, right? And then when she stepped away from that and kind of really got healthy again, and she jumped into working in the nonprofit world with Freedom 424, right? Where she was traveling every year to Thailand and India and working, with those women that are heavily involved in sex trafficking. And so like her person was very interesting.
Yeah.
And so, being the spouse of that, right? You're like, okay, like, hey, what are we doing today?
What are we doing
right?
now?
But Joe was such a good journalist and editor. If you remember, we owned Lynchburg Living.
Yeah, that's where I did my internship when I was in college.
Yeah.
And I loved it.
And so Joe had such an impact, in that space between being in TV and working in the nonprofit world, in that Lynchburg Living space. It really made her like this community fixture.
Yeah, she brought so many different perspectives to the table.
Yeah. And in fact, on her tombstone, it says she was the editor of our lives.
Aww.
And she was.
I love that.
She was so good at getting to the core of like, what made you tick, or what made you interested, what was your story, that kind of stuff. Yes. And so I just think that, the way that she walked out her cancer journey here in our community was just very indicative of who she was and how she had always lived. I will tell you, at home, like, she tucked away in the corner a lot. She was on the sofa often. She, slept more than she normally would. But I think she was just so tired.
Yeah.
And I think if I was speaking to, somebody who's watching another group of people going through cancer, or, you've got a person that's maybe third party removed from you that's going through something like this, just understand that, like, hey, maybe the reason they're not showing up as much to events and spaces is just they're exhausted, they're tired. And it takes them mustering all their energy, to even show up in public sometimes.
Yeah. Like we think of the things that we don't bring to the public view that do take so much out of us, and then multiply that.
Yeah.
And you get this journey that she was on.
That's right. Yeah.
And so she did have such a journalistic background. And I remember reading, so I read your book last night.
Oh, thank you.
And loved it. And there were so many things that that just hit home, and just these lessons. And I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but just to set this up, you had said that you kind of expected to find a book somewhere.
Yeah.
And so when you didn't, you were like, well, it needs to be done.
That's right.
So I don't want to use my words to describe your book, but tell us, like, what brought, well, first of all, let's see your book.
Oh, hey, I brought you a copy.
Thank you. And I'm really excited.
Yeah.
So I read it on PDF, but I'm a note.
That's for you.
Taker person. Thank you.
Yeah.
So let's skip the bull. And it says lessons from your dad after your mom died. And first, even that struck me, because that's just a very raw explanation. You don't try to use very careful language like passing. And so tell us the why for you behind this book.
So after Joe passed away, what became very clear is that what if I got hit by a car tomorrow? What if the same happened to me? Who's going to tell the kids all of these things?
Yeah.
Like the hard-fought wisdom that we had earned over more than 20 years of marriage. Because we hadn't always been perfect. We had failed so much that, you're accumulating these things. And if nobody's there as one of those partners, who's going to tell the kids?
Yes.
The second thing is like there's some really funny farm stories from when I was growing up that I just really wanted them to have. And both of those things have new meaning when you're about 30, when the frontal lobe has developed in a new way. But the truth is like none of us remember our conversations with our parents when we were kids.
Yes.
We might remember a few, but we remember experiences, we remember travel, we remember good and bad things that happened in our home, but we don't remember the conversations in detail. And so that's why I wrote them down. So, hey, when they're 30, they can open this thing back up and maybe it'll have new meaning to them.
This is incredible.
Thanks.
And as I was reading it, I was thinking about my own kids. And I have two very similar, so 11 and 13. And it never occurred to me, because I never stopped to think about my own conversations with my parents and wanting to put that down on paper. I think you're going to find that a lot of people are going to read this, and it's going to change how they think about those conversations, and maybe even choose to write them down and have them somewhere for their own kids, which I think is really cool, because you probably, this was for your kids, but now it's kind of for parents everywhere to look at this impact that they have very differently. I thought that was really cool. So what in your opinion is like your favorite story? Let's hear one of your stories.
Okay, so there's a bunch of funny farm stories that I interject, and and the real reason I did that was to kind of bring levity to the fact that a lot of it is very straightforward. It's like, hey, do this, don't do this.
Yes.
Here's some really
very
hard
practical.
lessons. Here's some hard lessons that we learned. And I think, when you think about trying to represent what their mother would have said well, like your voice kind of becomes merged with hers at times. And one of the things that sticks out to me is I'm trying to tell them how to be creative, because the two older ones, and this, they're super creative.
Yes.
Like they're constantly making. And I can see them entering into the world a lot like we are here, right? Like where we're in creative endeavors daily. Like how to navigate that. And then, we talk about money and work and like, hey, how to navigate, because that's one of the things, my parents created a really great home life for me as a child, but we didn't talk about money. And so like, hey, having some of those conversations, talking about love, right? And then also talking about faith and death. And, especially in our community here, religion is kind of overlaid on a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
and it's like,
a faith bubble.
So like, hey, how do we have that conversation well too? Because one of the things that we experienced a lot in Johanna's cancer journey was that faith overlay was a big part of it. And so a lot of people were bringing things to the conversation or to the table that we didn't necessarily hold in the same way. While we were both like believers and, had a strong faith, ours probably looked a little bit different, especially when you're going through things like that.
Yeah.
And so we were sent a lot of terrible books, we were sent a lot of terrible links.
Oh, no. And probably were offered a lot of cliche statements.
Yeah. We were also offered a lot of healing treatments,
That is a lot.
And so I think one of the things that I wanted, to kind of express myself was like, hey, like at the core of it all, like, here's how I want you guys to live. So anyway, so one of the funniest stories I think in the book, one of the appropriate ones is there are a few that are inappropriate. But my brother bought a dead sheep one time.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, he did. And so I tell that story of us being at the farmer's market. It was like basically like an old John Michael Montgomery song, right? Like I went down to the Grundy County auction and we're sitting in this dusty old school like cattle auction, and my brother, who's 7 or 8 at that time, keeps bidding on a sheep in a box. And he's the only person in the whole auction ring that's bidding on this. And the auctioneer doesn't even stop. He just keeps accepting this little kid's bid, which, is funny in hindsight. And so we drove home with a sheep in a box under our legs. The sheep died within 24 hours, which, the truth be told, like the only sheep you should be buying in a box are lamb chops, right? Like,
Yes. If it's in a box, you should probably move on.
But what's interesting is that today he's a very successful farmer, and he raises hundreds of head of buffalo and cattle.
No way.
And so like this lesson early on for him, like really taught him something. So anyway.
I love it.
Yeah.
So lots of fun.
Yeah.
Lots of really important lessons. I think everybody who reads this is going to learn a little bit of something.
Thanks.
Is there anything I haven't asked you or anything we haven't talked about that you think it's really important for those who are listening to walk away with? Because I already think that families who are going through what you went through with a family member who's going through, and not just cancer, I think about heart disease and so many different things, they're going to feel seen in a different way.
Yeah.
Maybe getting out their Google Notes and feeling like, me too.
Yeah.
But is there anything we haven't talked about that you wanted to touch on?
I think one of the things that I learned through this is that we all have people in our lives that are experiencing hard things.
Yeah.
It happens to us all. It's just part of being human. Don't try to fix that for them. Reach out to them, communicate to them like, hey, I love you. Hey, I'm so sorry. This is a really hard thing that you're going through. And then send them food. That's it. That's it. Don't try to solve the problem for them, right? Just be in the problem with them. And I don't need an additional resource for fixing cancer today. What I need is probably like an easy meal for my kids while my wife is on the couch asleep again. You know? And there were those people in our community that did that consistently, and it was just such a gift. So I'd say that's one of the biggest things. If you know somebody that's going through something really hard, especially as we talk about cancer, just show up for them in that way. Yeah. Okay. Or come sit with them. Just come sit with them.
Yeah. Community is so important in really any journey, but especially in moments like this. Where you don't maybe know what to ask for or how to reach out.
Because that person is never going to ask for anything.
No.
It's just not what we do. But when you just show up, it means a whole lot. It really does.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Caitlin.
Yeah, I really am excited for those of you who are listening to read this. Where can they get this?
Right now it's on pre-sale at bluehatpublishing.com. And then we will turn the Amazon, full fulfillment on sometime in June. Okay. But if you're interested in pre-sale, there are a limited amount of advanced copies, and you can order at bluehatpublishing.com. Okay. And it'll ship sometime in the 1st of May.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you all for joining us on And So Much More.